Okay, folks. So let's get into it. In terms of introductions, my name is PJ Kirk. I'm the marketing manager here at SustainIQ, and we're very lucky to be joined today by Liam McEvoy, who's co-founder at SustainIQ, and Elsie Hargate, who is the sustainability manager at Strata. So I'll hand over to both of them just to give a wee introduction to themselves, their experience, and their role, and we'll go from there. Liam, do you want to go first?
Yeah, thanks, PJ. Guys, delighted you can all join us this afternoon for this short webinar. Just a bit about myself. Obviously, one of the co-founders of SustainIQ, and my background would be working in the construction sector for nearly 20 years in the field of sustainability. So during my career, it was always very difficult to get access and visibility of ESG data, sustainability data across the project. So SustainIQ has kind of been born out of that to make it easy for our customers to track their performance and easily report then on performance to different stakeholders as well. So really looking forward to getting into the conversation today with Elsie, and delighted to have Strata with us today as well. Obviously, one of our customers based over in Doncaster. So yeah, looking forward to getting into the discussion. Elsie, I'll hand over to you.
Thanks, Liam. Hi, yeah, so I'm Elsie. I'm Sustainability Manager at Strata. So we're a home builder based in the north of England, building around 600 homes a year, team about 200 people, and we sort of vary across just low-rise residential, but looking at open market, and then pre-sold, covering housing associations and private rental sector. So we're quite diverse with how we operate now. My own background is sustainability. I've been working for 7 years now in the arena of sustainability, but across a variety of sectors. So gathering data for me is pretty much all I've ever done, trying to understand who's got access to what and how I can use that. The challenges that we're facing in construction and what I'm sort of using SustainIQ to try and figure out isn't isolated to us and what we're doing here. It is a tricky business to be in, and it's why I'm sort of hoping that this conversation today can help us figure out some of those issues.
Perfect. So we've just kicked off with a wee poll there, and by the response that's come through there, Scope 3 emissions is a big priority as we go into 2025 here. 96% of the respondents have said that it is going to be a major scope. It's going to be a major priority in 2025 for their business. So hopefully a lot of insights to be shared here today that'll help everyone hit the ground running. So just to kick things off, Liam, Elsie, from a commercial and regulatory perspective, why is effective ESG reporting so important, and what impact can it have on businesses?
Elsie, I'll let you kick off there.
Yeah, and I'm more than happy to jump in here. As a lot of you probably already know, there's sort of varying levels of reporting requirements for businesses now. And I guess for a lot of us, SECA is probably the first way that you guys would engage with anything on your Scope 1 and 2 reporting. We have to do it as part of our annual accounts, and it's something that's been ongoing for a long time now. I think there's some challenges with just grabbing hold of that data, but once you've tackled that, you can apply the same stuff to your Scope 3 as well. But my experience is that we're moving away from just SECA and ESOS and those regulatory sort of things that are allowing us to do this, but our funders, our stakeholders, they also want access to this data now as well. So you've got stakeholder expectations that are impacting purchasing and commercial decisions. So especially sort of industry bodies, they want access to this data as well, so that they can support the wider sector and sort of government targets to help inform what these reduction pathways are going to look like. So I think all of a sudden there's a big driver to get hold of this data, which whereas before it was just regulatory that wanted us to do this. I don't know, Liam, if you agree.
No, Elsie, 100%. I think it's coming at businesses like Strata from all angles, actually, at the minute. So, yeah, you guys have been reporting on SECA, on ESOS. We're obviously now waiting on the SDS coming, maybe I think Q1 of 2025, which is the UK's sustainability reporting standards. So businesses that meet that criteria will now be reporting under that as well. That's already been released across the EU, CSRD. So we know that that's also coming down the line. I think what we would see in terms of trends across our customer base have largely been driven through procurement. So certainly those customers maybe operating in the public space, maybe they're tendering for projects, schools, hospitals, that type of stuff. There's been such a focus there on sustainability related questions, the climate more so of late, but certainly over the last few years, it's always been a big player in procurement and particularly in tenders. So we're really starting to see that come more and more to the fore. So I think certainly it's needed from a regulatory perspective, but I think commercially, and then as Elsie said as well, the stakeholders, I think everyone now wants to work. They want to work with, they want to work for a more responsible business. And I think sustainability and having access to ESG data that you can publish, it starts to build that confidence in stakeholders that you are that kind of business and that what you say you're doing, you're able to back that up as well. So I think it's coming from all angles, PJ, legal, commercial, stakeholder, and you know, I think when you look at the direction of travel, certainly up to 2050, the emissions piece is really driving a lot of it forward as well. So it's all going in one direction.
And the whole process is undoubtedly not without challenge. What can you tell us about the challenges that organizations can expect to encounter when working with suppliers to gather that Scope 3 emissions data?
I'll jump in again here, Liam, if that's okay with you. I think the key thing here is understanding and education with your suppliers, your supply chain. It's a new concept to us and most people on this call. If you hear Scope 3, we understand that language now. We know what we're asking for. We know what we're talking about. Within the industry, especially in construction, when you're working with your smaller subcontractors and local manufacturers, they probably don't have a dedicated person working on sustainability depending on their size. And if you're not really clear and concise with what you're asking for and why you're asking for it and how they can gather that data themselves, it can make them worry. And they'll just throw any information at you just to try and get you off their backs. That's then not consistent, that's not accurate. So what we've sort of found a little bit that's really helpful is to just be really transparent with what you're working towards and why. So at Strata, we've spent quite a lot of time engaging with our supply chain. We have sort of regular touch points where we can let people know what's coming. So we don't let people know instantly that they now have to comply or provide data for a certain event or reason or project. We're letting them know 6-12 months in advance that we're currently working on something. And I think that's one of the key things, is letting people be visual and see exactly what you're working towards. And then it's allowing people time to figure that out. It's really easy to kind of want this data immediately, but it's a long process. Give people time, bring them on that journey with you, and it would really help, because we've had a lot of instances where some suppliers have just not had access to that data yet. And again, they've panicked and not known what to give us and how to give us it. So we've just sort of applied the brakes a little bit and worked alongside them to get their processes in place. And then I think, go back to that education side of it again, it's making sure that internally your entire team know what we're asking for as well, because you might not always be that first point of contact. So it has been really challenging to get our entire team on board with this as well, because it's not just me that's leading it in the business, it is strata wide.
Yeah, and I think, Elsie, I mean, I think what you've kind of nailed it there, and I think, you know, it's not unique to Strata. I think we're seeing it right across the entire sector. Scope 3 is huge, obviously, and we can't achieve any of these targets if we don't bring our supply chain along with us. They're critical. So, you know, it is important that we start these conversations and we start engaging with them. I think one big challenge that we see as a trend, again, would be across procurement teams. I think when we look at sustainability and the journey that it's been on since maybe the mid-2000s, there's a lot of departments and organizations that have been impacted through by sustainability over the years. But procurement has been one of those departments that, you know, have been relatively shielded from it until now, because we cannot get to the supply chain, particularly for scope 3 emissions, without going through the procurement departments. And I think that they have really been impacted by this massively. And I think we're seeing that when we're talking to them. They're also a little bit unsure. So they're looking, for example, at, you know, the T's and C's within their orders, within their subcontractor work packages, all of these different things. It's all new. It's never really been done before. And I think everything that Elsie just said, they're just about being really, really clear in the ask what it is that you're looking, because there is a lot of confusion out there. I would also say there's a lot in the supply chain that are totally unawares of all of this. They had, you know, they just don't think it applies to them. And I think one thing we always kind of remind folks at SustainIQ that even if you're not impacted by this legally, chances are you will be impacted by it commercially. Your clients, your customers, stakeholders will eventually come looking scope 3 data from you. And so it's important to use the time now wisely to get those processes that Elsie was talking about embedded, get them in place so that you've got that flow of data, you've got access to it, so that whenever Strata or whoever it is come looking that information from you for a project or for an order or whatever service it might be that you're providing, that you know, as a supplier, you have access to that and you can very, very quickly turn it around, because that is a big challenge at the minute. A lot of the smaller guys perhaps maybe just wouldn't have the resource and therefore don't have the process in place to actually provide this information yet. So completely agree with Elsie. I think big challenge at the minute is lack of understanding, lack of awareness, and therefore there's still a big need right across the supply chain for education, and as much of it as possible. Carbon literacy courses, for example, as Elsie said, we're all talking about this new terminology, and we really do need to kind of upskill the entire supply chain so that they know what it is, you know, we are looking from them and why we're looking at. So it's a big challenge ahead. I often kind of look at the analogy with health and safety. Someone gave it to me months ago, and it kind of clicked. It kind of made sense. You know, 20 odd years ago, we started the health and safety journey really in terms of looking at a lot of that information, RAMs and so on. And it was difficult, continues to be difficult at times, but you know, back then it was you know, starting out a whole new journey. Fast forward 20 years, it's very much just part of the day-to-day. Everyone knows that's the expectation. And from an ESG perspective, and right now in particular the scope 3 agenda, it's very much, you know, the start of that journey again. We have to start the education piece. We have to start working closely with each other so we can deliver a consistent message right across the supply chain. And again, if we fast forward 3 to 5 years from now, the data that we now want today, it will start coming through more on a day-to-day, but we're just not there yet. And we're probably just, you know, all experiencing the pain points just as we kind of start out with the supply chain trying to get the info through. So a long way to go, but look, we've made a start, and that is the most important thing.
I think you've sort of brushed around some of the other areas there, Liam, a little bit as well. With the wider industry, we're talking very much here about supplier engagement, but some of the challenges around wider industry engagement as well. This is new. It's really new. And methodologies vary between industries and even within industries. So I think a challenge that we're all going to face is how do we address that? It's what methodology do we align to? And again, using a system such as SustainIQ means that we're able to keep up to date with the changes in methodology, whether that be RICS or the Greenhouse Gas Protocol, because they are evolving and they're going to keep evolving. Because it's so new. It's not like a lot of your accounts where it's sort of agreed and it's been happening for years. There's going to be instances where we have to change our methods and then backdate it. And that's tricky because you think you've just mastered something and then somebody comes up with a new idea. And it might be that unless we sort of all start looking at systems like this, people will start churning out numbers that can't be compared and that aren't useful. So I think it is really important, and it is a challenge for us all to try and get our heads together and figure out how do we align what we're doing so that we're consistent.
It is, and it is consistency, Elsie. You're right, because there's nothing worse than that confusion going through the supply chain, you know, and also, even companies, all asking for different things in different ways. It just, so yeah, I completely agree with that. That's a really good point.
So earlier this year, I attended a conference, and one of the points that was made was that, as this legislation and as these sort of regulatory pressures mount, organizations need to make sure that they're not treating ESG reporting like GDPR, that it's and not approaching it with this one and done approach or with this one and done mindset. Have you found any challenge with suppliers being large advocates of reporting at the beginning, but then losing interest? And how have you gone about actually addressing that?
I think as it stands, because we are quite early in our journey as well, we've had really good engagement. So we've not yet had any instances where we've sort of had data for a while and it's just disappeared. But we are still working on sort of pilot project by project basis. I expect that as time goes on, it will become project dependent. It will depend who the team is working on that project, who the commercial team are, who the site team are, and things like that. We might then find that if not every single person involved in collecting and managing that data are as engaged as sort of we are, then it will drop off. So it's going to be a really big piece to make sure that your internal culture at your own business is where it needs to be as well, to drive that through so that your supply chain can't get away with engaging for a little bit and then disappearing.
Yeah.
And what other processes?
I haven't seen, yeah, sorry, PJ, I haven't seen any issues of drop off. I suppose what we would maybe see would be the accuracy and the reliability maybe of some of the data coming through at times can be a bit patchy, but I think that's to be expected because again, it's new. We're now asking for something that we've never asked for before. So, I think that again, Elsie made the point previous around, and Strata do this really, really well around providing time. We can't go out asking for something on Friday and expect it in the inbox on Monday morning. These guys need time to implement a lot of the process themselves in order to get data flow moving. So I would say that some of the quality coming through, but again, that's going to improve in time. They're going to start to understand what it is that is required, how often it's required. And with that, we're going to see an improvement in the quality, the overall quality coming through. And I expect to see that over the next 12 months and beyond. I think, again, back to the procurement teams, it's relatively new there for them. So I think once they get a handle on it, so particularly around embodied carbon and the Scope 3 agenda of products and materials coming through and the need for environmental product declarations and all of that, I think once they get their head around all of that and the requirements, it's also going to help whenever those appointments are taking place, be it a supplier of product materials or a subcontractor for a work package and so on. So a lot of that's going to be built in to T's and C's, built into contracts. It's all going to start to become a lot more clear as well. So I just think there's a lot of moving parts at the minute, and we're seeing a lot of traction, which is great. But again, I think over the next 6, 12, 18 months, we'll start to see significant improvements.
And that brings me on very nicely, I suppose, to the next question. And I suppose it builds on something Elsie recently invited us to the Strata offices as part of their supplier engagement day. I think that's a really good example of ways by which organizations can actually maintain this engagement with suppliers and sort of deliver that education piece. What other processes and what other processes do you feel you can put in place to help maintain that education piece on an ongoing basis and demonstrate the importance of this reporting to your suppliers?
There's so much. I don't think you can necessarily see ESG reporting in silo. If you want effective ESG reporting, you really need to think about that governance side of ESG and make sure that you're really pushing it through your business. So for us at Strata, we've got a combined top-down and bottom-up approach, and it's been essential that we use both of those to meet in the middle. So from a top-down perspective, we've got buy-in from leadership. Our CEO, Gemma, she is the chair of the Sustainability Committee. We meet quarterly. We've then got working groups that feed into that committee, where we've got individuals that are in management roles, individuals that are not in management roles. And if they've got an interest or they cross over with that area, whether that be energy and carbon or biodiversity and nature or our sort of community outreach, they're involved in that conversation. So they can help steer as a business the ideas that we're generating, the trials that we're putting in place. And if you don't have that drive from the top, kind of saying, well, this is happening now, but then offering people support at the bottom to allow them to come with you and offering that support and education, you're not going to be able to sort of get hold of your own data. And we're very much here talking about supplier engagement to get data, but you've got to be able to do it internally as well. So that's where we started at Strata. We've done a massive piece sort of the last 18 to 24 months, getting everyone up to speed. We've allowed time for staff. We've had days out of work where we've all been together looking at our values as a business and how that crosses over with sustainability and social purpose. Our new starters, we've got a good group of them, and then I run a session with them and introduce them to our sustainability strategy, which again, top down, that's 40 solid targets that we've got that we're all working towards, while we've got green projects going on in the background that people can get involved with from that bottom up approach. So we found that in sort of really working on our internal culture, we've been able to get the ball rolling with our supply chain as well. So when I first started my role 18 months ago, I was going to people, I was going to suppliers, I was asking questions. Whereas now I cannot get off my phone, I can't get out of my inbox because somebody always wants or needs something, which is great. That's where we want to go. And if it wasn't for that sort of building that culture in the first place, that wouldn't have happened. So yeah, very much one of the things we've done is just build a real culture of sort of sustainability and ESG within our business. It's one of our sort of core values is human connection and responsibility, so that we feel responsible for each other and the planet around us.
And you can see it, Elsie, even when you're in your offices and stuff, and even the suppliers, the subcontractors are coming in and out. There's a constant flow. There's a real collaborative approach there, which I think is incredible as well. So I think all of that, you're right, will help build that structure going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. So you attended one of our supplier drop-in days. So we do all this internally, but every single month at Strata, we have a supplier drop-in day where we open up our head office, we put breakfast on, gets all the subbies in. We put breakfast on, our commercial team, our production team, myself, and some of the sort of key technical people in the business are all available. Our suppliers, manufacturers, subcontractors, they can all just come in through any point through that day and just talk to us. Generally, these aren't themed. We can chat about anything, maybe upcoming contracts, it might be existing jobs, and it allows us to manage those relationships on such a more relaxed basis. It's not stuffy boardrooms, it's nothing like that. We then don't get the problems, we don't get any issues coming to light. Well, possible I'll get the odd one, but nothing bubbles, because every month you've got the space to get in contact with the people that you need. And what we did last month is we actually utilised one of these regular drop-in days and themed it as a sustainability drop-in day. And what we did is we got all our working group chairs, managers from across the business, to be available and just talk about and communicate what we're doing. So we communicated our sustainable procurement policy that's now out in the public domain, our biodiversity and nature policy, our energy and carbon roadmap, and our social value framework. So the key things that we're currently working on as a business. There was no obligations. We weren't asking people to sign up or give us anything there and then. We were just allowing them the space to understand what it is we're working towards and why. Gemma, our CEO, was sort of in the mix, just mingling with all the team and the staff. And it was just really allowing people to get a feel for what we're working towards, view these documents and the commitments that we have now made, so that when we start getting back in touch with people over the next few months, they understand why we're asking these questions, what exactly it is. And it was great, Liam and PJ, to have you both there as well, so that people could see the system and understand a bit more about that wider importance of that ESG reporting. And I can say that since then, I've had multiple suppliers get in touch with me, asking what they can do, how they can get involved, and what they need from me. And I've not even got their projects yet, as opposed to me sort of having to go out to a new project and send an email out to everybody, kind of suddenly asking them for something, people are now waiting and wanting, just sort of saying, we're ready, let us know and we'll work with you, which is great. That's exactly what we wanted out of that day.
That's good.
I think
That's and again, happy to be involved in that. I think, PJ, what I would say again, I see it in Strata and I see it in other companies as well. ESG just being built in to existing processes, into existing procedures, and therefore, as Elsie said earlier, it's not siloed. It's operating right across the business at all levels. But I do think it's important, that I know I'm sitting here from SustainIQ's perspective, people would expect me to say it, but I do think going forward, it's important to look at digital solutions to help with all of this as well. You know, realistically, when we start, today we're talking about Scope 3 emissions, which in itself is a beast. But when we look at the wider ESG agenda and the amount of data that's going to be required going forward, realistically, a solution like SustainIQ or whatever, it is going to be essential for businesses going forward.
Absolutely agree with that, Liam. If it wasn't for SustainIQ, we would not have access to the data that we do. It's having a user-friendly system as well. We, of course, like if anyone's sort of looking at a solution, I've demoed so many, and a lot of them are great, they're so functional, but it's having something that our team can just view and understand, using the app side of it to just get data into it. It's made a huge difference, and it's allowed us, like you say, to make it not this siloed system. We're very much working to integrate this across the whole team. So different people across the business have access, and different teams are responsible for uploading different data. So for example, this is more Scope 1, but my production admin team, they get their meter readings from site every month and they are inputting it. So they can cross-reference any photos and make sure that it matches then for accounts. So that's integrated with another process. Thinking about waste, I've been able to push all our waste reporting back to my waste management companies. They've got your sort of CSV pro formas, and then they ping that across to their surveyor. So now that's the commercial team that are involved, and it's the commercial team that upload. Well, we've got group agreements in place. It's the procurement team that do that data upload. So it's been really important to have a solution that everyone can integrate with and understand, that I can just sort of do a lot of hand holding initially. And with the Scope 3 stuff, the delivery is massive, and trying to do that without a technological system would be nearly impossible. We're not gated. A lot of people will be gated, but if you are, that'll make your life so much easier. You can just, every time someone comes onto your site, scan a QR code and find out where they've come from and where they're going. Like, it's a game changer, it really is, and I'm really excited to be able to utilize that side of the platform a little bit more.
That's good. That's good. No, it is. It's evolving rapidly. It really is.
We'll wrap up with one wee final question to both of you, and then we'll go into we'll take a look at some of the poll results that come back, because they're quite interesting, and then we'll go into a short Q&A if that suits everyone. So just to wrap things up from I suppose a formal question point of view, what advice would you give to anyone that's on the call that is starting their Scope 3 and supplier engagement journey?
I'll jump in if you want, Liam. I just make a start, engage with your supply chain, really light-hearted, just let them know it's coming. Don't go in too hard to start with, and just educate them, bring them on the journey. Because this is coming. We've not had a chance to delve massively into the embodied carbon side of stuff, but we're starting to collect data on EPDs and things like that. And most of the conversations I've had over the last couple of months have been from businesses that don't yet have these, that want to understand how important it is, so that they're able to tailor their reporting to what we need. And if we'd not had that initial engagement, we'd be 6 months behind, because we'd be asking them for that data in 6 months and they wouldn't have it, whereas now they can start the ball rolling. So yeah, find some good contacts in your supply chain and just make a start. Find a single project with a good team and just pilot it and see how it goes. Get a system, a process that works, and then you can roll that out bigger. That's what we're doing, and so far it's working. Not without its challenges, but we're getting there.
Yeah, no, I agree. We always say, like, your supply chain, your Scope 3 emissions is going to be the biggest part of your footprint. But you can't tackle it all day one. So I think a bit of a mapping exercise across your supply chain, understand who is maybe having the biggest impact there, and maybe focus down on your top tier suppliers initially, be that top 10, top 50, top 100, whatever it might be. Just don't try and tackle everything at once. And I think then being dead clear in your ask, what it is you're looking, how often you need it, and how you want them to report it. Again, just consistency around the frequency, around what it is that you're actually looking from them, and how you expect them to report it. Just having that nailed down so that that message is consistent right across the supply chain as well. And as Elsie said, start small. Don't be asking, don't be overloading them with requests. Again, we would advise, even from a scope 3 perspective, just start off small, and it's easier to then build from that and start adding more and more as the months and the years kind of roll on. But at this stage, it's just about getting a little bit of the data flow moving. And then that will help with the accuracy and the reliability that's coming through as well. I think carbon literacy is still key, and there's a lot of support out there. Business in the community, Keep Scotland Beautiful. There's the Carbon Literacy Project. There's so many organisations out there that are available to work with business to help them upskill their supply chain through a series of workshops. They've got a lot of resources and so on that is available. And I think it's important to tap into that, because we're not all experts in everything. There's people out there that can come in, that can help, that can engage and help upskill. And I think that education bit should always be upfront. Get that done first, and then I think it makes everything else that stems from that a lot easier as well.
So we'll wrap up with the formal questions, but we've been conducting a few polls throughout the event, and I would love to get your guys' thoughts on it, because some quite interesting results. So majority, 96% of the attendees plan to report on their scope 3 in 2025. However, about 50% of them are currently reporting. That in itself is interesting, but where it gets really interesting is, of those that are reporting, a majority are actually not receiving anything back from suppliers. And those who are receiving stuff back from suppliers are having difficulty with that, with the accuracy of it. Any thoughts on that?
I'd say that's probably quite similar to what we've experienced, is that we've been really good actually at getting data back on the projects that we selected, because we've been going really direct to people and asking for it. So we have been getting stuff back, but there's been an awful lot of work at trying to understand the accuracy and reliability of that data. I don't have a great deal of advice, other than if you can offer sort of templates where bits are sort of grayed out, they can only input certain data in a certain format, it will help massively, because that's what we've done, and be really clear with what you're asking for.
Yeah, totally agree. I wouldn't be overly shocked by those results either, PJ. It's very similar to what we are seeing. And again, I think at this stage, it's to be expected. It's the start of the journey. At this stage, it's all about the engagement and start the ball rolling. I think even if we look at ourselves as businesses, and we look at when we first pulled our baselines together, maybe a few years ago, we had our scope 1 or scope 2, again, relatively easy enough to pull together based on the fact that we're paying for all of those emissions. But even when we look at our own sort of scope 3 back in the day, and how that has evolved from maybe even just 2 years ago to now, and we are even seeing a lot of customers now starting a whole new baseline year for their scope 3, because the information is more available, and it just made sense from their perspective to just kind of almost do it over again. So I think this is just going to be work in progress over the next few years, and I think it's all about staying close to the suppliers, offering as much help, as much support, as much resource as possible, and then I think that collaborative approach will just pay dividends in the hopefully not too distant future.
Perfect. So we'll take a few questions from the audience here. If you have any questions, fire them through. But we'll start with one that we received here. So I worked in the insurance industry, and we are starting engagement with Scope 3 suppliers, but have been advised that it may be better to measure Scope 1 and 2, but engage with Scope 3 suppliers, but not allocate actual targets for Scope 3. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'll jump in, Elsie, if you're happy enough just on that. And again, yeah, I mean, I would say that it's just important to start that journey around the Scope 3. Again, actually, just what I was saying previous around how even over the last couple of years, it's just evolved. It's going to continue to evolve. I suppose what we would see with regards to customers and so on, and just in the wider industry, a lot of people obviously have their Scope 1, their Scope 2, and then their Scope 3. It's kind of kept separate because they understand as Scope 3 continues to build and evolve over the coming years, it's constantly going to impact the overall footprint. So to kind of keep it slightly separate from 1 and 2 from a reporting perspective, it just makes everyone's life a lot easier. So I think we still have to engage, and we have to start that process. But in terms of the targets around Scope 3 as well, I think it's always going to be, well, certainly for the next while, it's going to be very difficult because Scope 3 is just going to continue to build and build. And we'll probably not get a full picture of what it even looks like for our own business for maybe another, I don't know, 18 months or so realistically. So I don't know, Elsie, your thoughts on that?
Completely agree. So at Strata, we have got separate targets for Scope 1 and 2 and Scope 3. With Scope 1 and 2 being that we want to be net zero by 2030 with Scope 1 and 2, and Scope sort of net zero operationally. So with the homes we deliver, they will operate at net zero. Our office, our spaces will operate at net zero. But then we've got Scope 3, embodied supply chain carbon. And the only target we've put in place there is that we will reduce this. We've not put a percentage reduction, we've not put a timeline, and there was multiple reasons for that. The first one being we didn't not want to set a target, but we couldn't set a target on data we don't have access to yet. So I'd say that the advice you've received is probably just, spot on, really. It's exactly what we're doing, and from the wider industry. In construction, whenever we're engaging, people are doing the same, unless they've got a huge team or they've sort of outsourced it to a consultant to do their life cycle carbon analysis stuff. No one's got this baseline yet, so I think it'd be really tricky and unreasonable to put a reduction and date target on there without having access to it.
I think though, Elsie, what I've seen you guys have done, I think a lot are doing as well though, is you're setting out not a target, but you're making clear sort of actions that can be taken to reduce, you know, be it the biodiesels or whatever it might be on site, or the, you know, transition over to green tariffs, or, you know, the investment in renewables, whatever it might be. There's definitely an action plan in there as part of the carbon reduction plan. So I think there's still very much a focus there on how do we get Scope 3 down, how do we reduce it, but absolutely, while kind of also understanding it's difficult to measure, because 12 months from now it could look very, very different. Even though we're investing in so much in terms of reduction, it's still but that's just because more and more is starting to come in as more and more of the information becomes available.
Yeah, definitely. We're simultaneously looking at reductions and baseline calculations. We're not doing one and then the other, they're happening at the same time.
Perfect.
Ladies and gents, I think that'll we'll wrap it up there for the day, unless anyone has any other questions. Type as fast as you can, we'll get it in. But otherwise, Elsie, Liam, thank you for your time this afternoon. Folks, if you'd like to learn more about what we're doing, please do get in touch. Head to our website, SustainIQ.com. We'll be happy to talk a little bit more about what was discussed on the call here, or on the webinar here today. We'll also have an ebook coming next week that'll sort of go over a lot of this in a bit more detail. So be sure to keep an eye out for that. Other than that, have a great rest of your evening. A lovely Friday.
Sorry, PJ, for jumping in there.
Oh, go ahead.
Elsie, just thinking about, you guys have recently I'm not sure if you published your new report, but is it published, and if so, is it available on the website if people want to check it out?
Yeah, we've got sort of array of well, we've got our old report and we've also got our sustainability strategy and our reduction roadmap and policies are all on there. We've not yet got this year's report out in the public domain, but if you're wanting to look at sort of the governance side of what we're doing and how we're doing it, that's all available at the Strata website.
Perfect. Thank you so much, guys. Elsie, thank you again. And Liam, thanks very much, folks. Have a lovely evening and thanks for joining. Bye.